podcast, everybody. My name is Daniel, as in Ghost Guy Daniel. Quick note, I've moved all the notes and updates to the end of the podcast just to make it a little bit more streamlined, I guess you could say. But today, what I'm going to cover is my personal favorite. Now, this is my own city. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and this is my own city's oldest known ghost. Now, I don't know how it fares up wherever you're listening from right now. Maybe your town or city has an older ghost. If by the end of this you're screaming, that doesn't count as much, I want you to let me know. So if anybody needs to contact me, you can message me through Facebook at Ghost Guy Daniel or email at ggdaniel@ghostwalks.com. So today I'm going to talk about my personal city's oldest known ghost. And as well, in the strange news segment, I'm going to focus on what is, I think you could consider it the most famous, potentially the most haunted ship. That's ship with a P. So in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, this is a very old city if you compare it to other cities in Canada. I mean, overall, Canada is just a little baby country. If you compare it to England or even the United States for its history, you're not going to find it. I mean, you look into the native history for sure, and even French history up in Quebec with Montreal and Quebec City. It predates the English settlement, the British coming to Canada quite a bit. So you will find more history, definitely an older sense of dark history, and of course older ghost stories in Quebec. But for Ontario, the region that I live in, which for those who don't know, Hamilton is in between Toronto and Niagara Falls. So that region there, which is technically known as the Golden Horseshoe, is the most historic for British Canada. So Niagara Falls, for example, the Loyalists coming up from the United States, that's where they settled first. So you can have Loyalist towns like Niagara-on-the-Lake, Dundas, Flamborough, Ancaster, that date back to the mid to late 1700s. And Hamilton itself, its history only goes back to the 1840s technically, but the Loyalist towns that make it up, including the center, Hamilton, was a town known as Barton. Those ones date back to the 1700s. So people always ask me the question is, why is Hamilton having so many ghost stories and amazing ones at that? Well, we have an interesting energy here. Our history is definitely more of a dark history from its mafia past and the interesting type of criminals and murderers that we've had over the years. But as well, because of that 1700s link, the history here is actually more robust than anywhere else in Canada, other than maybe Niagara, of course, and Kingston, which is an area that, for whatever reason, I don't know historically why they chose it, but Kingston was actually supposed to be our capital over Ottawa, because of the history. So Hamilton, though, has that interesting past to it, and I'm not sure, it's an underdog city. We've always been in the shadow of Toronto when it comes to business, and we're in the shadow of Niagara Falls when it comes to tourism, so we're kind of stuck in a weird spot. I love the spot. I mean, it's in the center of everything when you think about it. With geography, it's definitely an advantage to live in Hamilton, and history shows that. But when it comes to reputation, we've taken quite the hit. But if you peel away all the layers of interesting characters and the factories and whatnot, then underneath you'll find a beautiful city with a rich history. And so that's my very long intro to what I'm getting in. I just want you to know. I mean, if you're not from Hamilton, you probably don't know all this stuff, or maybe you just heard the reputation. But Hamilton and Hamiltonians are very proud of their city. So with that history comes amazing ghosts, and that's what I want to talk about. So for this, I'm going to focus in on one building that I have quite a strong history with, is the Custom House. Now, currently, And ever since I was involved with the place through a ghost walk and through some events, it is the Workers' Arts and Heritage Center. Now, this is an interesting museum. I highly recommend a visit once all this pandemic stuff has calmed down a bit. It is a museum dedicated to blue-collared workers, and this is the city for that. This is Steel Town. If any of my American listeners, you know that you guys have Pittsburgh, we have Hamilton. So this is Steel Town. Blue-collared workers, this is the center of that, and therefore this museum just makes sense. And what they did is they chose, I don't know, there is a connection with blue-collared workers in this building. To be honest, I mean, if you look at the history and I say custom house, you're thinking, okay, government, bureaucracy, and politics, and what does that have to do with blue-collar workers? But I don't know if they focused on it for a reason, but there was a 9 hours march. If you look that up, it was to try and take down, which I think at the time was a 10 to 14 hour workday, which is insane if you look at it from now, and take it down to 9 hours, which is more manageable. So the guy who wrote the poem I'm about to read you, he was a part of that, a guy named Alexander Wingfield. And currently there is a statue of the man inside of this museum. So the 9 hours march did go by the custom house. I don't know if it's because of Wingfield's connection to it, but so it does have that connection. So there is a historic connection to make it a museum like that. Apart from that, it's just a very cool building. Again, highly recommend it. Workers' Arts and Heritage Center. You can Google it. But its connection to history kind of takes a bit of a turn from there. So it starts out as a custom house, and then it's everything else afterwards. Now, I don't mean literally everything else. It was a school. It was one of the Hamilton's first YWCA. It was they called it a social services building, but from what I heard, it was just an abandoned building with an open front door. So a lot of darker stuff happened during that time. It was a macaroni factory, which is one of my favorites, Naples Macaroni Factory. It had a bit of a time being abandoned, well over a decade. And then after that, it was a karate dojo. A guy named Don Warner opened it up as a karate dojo, which is amazing. So then after that, I think there was a couple other smaller things that came in. And then after that, it was the museum. I've been in the museum since, I'm going to say, the 1990s. So with that history, you got to think about it, right? With that history, there's so many people and so many uses, and with this thing of the social services agency, so many darker things that have occurred inside of that building. So it gives it an energy, and that's why the Custom House, in my mind, is the most haunted building in the city of Hamilton. I think definitely can go against any as the most haunted building in Canada. I don't know if I will take on some of the places in the United States. I mean, they got freaking insane asylums. I think those take the cake. But for Canada in general, the Custom House is pretty good. So the history leading to the energy, and then what we did is we were able to go in there and run events for many years. I'm talking about the Ghost Walks. So the Ghost Walks can go in and run many events for over the years, including a walking tour. And towards the end, we had ghost hunts. Now, I say towards the end because we don't do those anymore. Make that as a special note. I would love to see them come back in the future, but for now, some reasons we've parted ways. If you want more information about that, message me. I will let you know. But during that time that we were there, which I wouldn't trade for anything, is amazing the stuff that we experienced. And me personally, this place next to the Hermitage ruins, which I've talked about before, is the reason why I am such a staunch believer in the idea of ghosts. Using my scientific and skeptical mind, it's bended it towards the idea of ghosts. Forcing me to try and look into that sense of energy, what ghosts really are. This building next to the Hermitage, my own personal experience, has done that. So what I want to focus on, though, because this building is quite robust, definitely don't have enough time in one podcast to cover everything, but I'm going to focus on the main ghost of the building. Now, she, as I mentioned and teased, is the oldest known ghost in the city. And as far as I know, my own knowledge, I'm sure somebody could disprove this, but is the oldest known ghost in Canada. And the reason I say this is because of Alexander Wingfield's poem. Now, I'm going to read it. The reason I hesitate a little bit there is because we used to read it during every single tour, and I countless times that I've read the edited version of the poem during the tour, and then we stopped. And one of the main reasons we stopped was an event that happened in, I think, 2014, where and I'll just paraphrase. It was like a possession that happened during one of the seances and during a hunt. And after that, we communicated with the spirit, and the spirit told us that she didn't like the poem. So from that point forward, I promised her I wouldn't read the poem in the building. You see? I should have been a lawyer. Added that little added extra there, in the building. But I didn't say anything about a podcast. In fact, at the time when I promised her that, I didn't even know I would have a podcast. So it all works out for the best. I just hope she's not standing behind me right now while I'm recording this. I kind of feel eyes, burning into my back at the moment. But whatever, I digress. I need to entertain you, and I will put my own life at risk to entertain you. Don't tell my wife that I said that. So the poem that we read during the tours that eventually got canceled was a smaller one, an edited version. I'm going to give you the full one here. This is the full one that Alexander Wingfield. And it is very beautiful. It is a beautiful poem. I am definitely a personal fan of it. So Alexander Wingfield wrote this in the late 1800s. I don't have the exact date on me right now. But so he wrote it. It's called The Woman in Black. And if you read it and take it literal, it does seem like it is about a dark ghost. Hence the legend of the Dark Lady. But there has also been a historical note stated that it was Wingfield was technically writing about alcoholism. So that the woman in black that's talked about here was alcohol, and a man struggling with that, which is possibly true as well. And I'll come back to that here. I'm going to make a note for myself. Talk about the creation of ghosts, because I want to mention that. So, but I'm going to start with the poem first, and I'll get into that. If it is just about alcoholism, what could potentially come from a staunch belief in this? So let's do the poem first, though. So it is called The Woman in Black. So I'm just going to take a sip of coffee here. It is called The Woman in Black by Alexander Wingfield, written in the late 1800s. The ghosts long ago used to dress in pure white, but now they've gone on a different track. For the Hamilton ghost seems to take a delight to stroll round the city in black. Pat Duffy, who saw her in Corktown last night, has been telling his friend, that she stood 7 feet and 9 inches in height and wore a large Grecian bend. A peeler who met her turned blue with affright, and in terror he clung to a post. His hair, once a carroty red, had turned white since the moment he locked on the ghost. Her appearance was frightful to gaze on. He said it filled him with horror complete, for she looked unlike anything, living or dead, that ever been seen on his beat. Her breath seemed as hot as a furnace. Besides, it smelled strongly of sulphur and gin. 2 horns a yard long struck straight out of her head, and her hooves made a great clatter and din. Her air was majestic and terribly grand, as she passed muffled up in a veil. A bottle of ruin she held in each hand, as she uttered a low plaintive wail. There is rest for the weary, but no rest for me. I cannot find rest if I try. 3 months and 3 days I have been on the spree. Mr. Mueller says, how that for a high? I have mixed in the world both with spirits and men. Once more with the spirits I'll go. She stopped, took a sniff of the ruin, and then she popped into the cellar below. He could hear her again crying out from her den, tonight you will see me no more, but I'll meet you Saturday evening at 10 by the fountain that stands in the gore. That's interesting. You can kind of listen in the poem, and you can see how some might think it's a ghost and others may think it's about alcoholism, because there is references there to alcohol. So there's confusion, and some of the best legends in history come from that sense of confusion. So what has come out of this is a legend, and as well a ghost itself. Now, I have experiences with the ghost. I've heard other experiences, and I will share those after the break. But for now, what I want to do is kind of just quickly give you a breakdown of the legend itself. I'm going to go quick with this one. Maybe in a future podcast I'll go in more detail. But the bird's eye view of the legend is about a young girl who was living in England. She became pregnant by a man in the village who was much older than her, and back then it was not normal for this. It was, women were treated quite poorly, and instead of this man having to take the responsibility for it, instead her parents felt it was much safer. He was high up in the society, so it's not just a regular man. He had connections, so her parents worried about her, sent her away for her safety. So they put her on a boat coming over to Canada. It's going to settle in Hamilton in front of the newly built custom house. So as it's sailing over, it is said that she took sight of the ship's captain, and the captain took sight of her. Now, I don't know, the legend really doesn't go into detail about their love, just says that there was an affair, and that as they are coming, I guess she's not showing with child unless this guy's just a freak, but as they're coming to Hamilton, seeing the lights of the city, the town, the captain then remembers he has a family, so he has to do something about it. And this unfortunate psychopath in the legend invites her up to the deck one evening and chokes her to death. And instead of, respectful enough not to throw her in the water, he then, once they dock in Hamilton, they say he takes her into the basement of the newly built custom house and walls her up in the basement vault. And the vault was quite a center for this type of energy. An interesting room down in the basement. So that's the legend that came of it. So it was understandable that the ghost inside the building would not be a happy ghost. And if you look at the poem as well, she doesn't seem like a very happy ghost. She was described as the devil himself in so many words. And with what happened to her, if you believe any of that, then there you go. So that's the reason why that they believe that her energy is there. So you have the poem, and you have this legend that has taken hold from the 1800s. So the thing I added here, I wanted to talk about it, is the idea that a strong belief in a ghost over many decades by many people, and this is just my own theory, I haven't read anything about it, but does it have the ability to manifest? I think they've even tried to done experiments on this. So can you, with a really strong belief in a ghost, can you manifest it into reality? I'll leave you with that thought before we go into the break, because I'm going to come back and give you some examples of interactions with this supposed dark lady. So if you do or don't believe in the idea of manifesting a ghost, if the dark lady was not a real spirit, I've had experiences with her, other people have, things have happened that have proved to us that there is something in that building that could very well be this dark lady, whether it was manifested or not. But with saying that, we're going to go into a break. If you have any tools or anything you can sense, this time we're truly talking about ghosts. Like I said, my ears are burning right now. I don't know if there's something standing behind me, so maybe there's something standing behind. I hope for your case. I don't. How you feeling? So, during some renovations at the Workers' Hearts and Heritage Center, which is inside the Custom House, that's the museum I was talking about. So they were doing some renovations, and I'm trying to see if this was renovations for the museum. I think it was. So this is after the karate dojo and before the museum. They come in and they're working on it. So there is a painter named Jim. He considers himself a psychic, and he's sensitive. Let's say sensitive, that he could pick up on things. And people who are more sensitive, whether you are psychic and do readings or not, you understand this. So if you go into a room that has an energy in it, you feel it. If the energy in a room changes because of how people feel around you, you feel that as well. And the worst part of that sensitivity is empathy on a psychic level, which can be very draining. So I don't think Jim was on that level, but he was attached to that sensitivity so much so that he was able to receive messages through his dreams. So he did have a dream one night. So during the renovations, this mantelpiece, you know what, this might have been from the karate dojo, because I think the mantelpiece was down there still. So the mantelpiece used to be in what we call the dark room. This is a large, beautiful piece of art that was over top of a fireplace. And it was inside the dark room, which is at the end of the hall on the first floor. So when they were doing the renovations to make it more modern looking, they needed to remove the mantelpiece. Well, needed is a strong word. They shouldn't have, to be honest. I think it would have been more beautiful in its original spot, but that's just me. They were going to move the mantelpiece. So Jim is tasked with doing this. And he has a dream the night before it's to be done. And a woman with dark hair tells him, if you move my mirror, there will be a flood. So he wakes up from the dream very disturbed, I don't know, sweating. It's stuff you see in horror movies. So he comes in the next day and no, it was the museum, because he tells the curator about the dream. And she promised to present it to the board and actually say, okay, this painter had a dream. We shouldn't move the mantelpiece because the dark lady's going to get us. Of course she didn't do it. I think she was just telling Jim to kind of calm his nerves. But still, in the end, he was told to move it. So he's up, like, just picture being poor Jim up there on the ladder, having to take down this massive thing with just a little bit of help, and just like thinking, okay, the ladder's going to get knocked down, I'm going to break my neck. Well, thankfully for Jim, nothing happened. He was fine. So they got the mantelpiece down, they moved it up into the attic. It is still up there to this very day. And then they leave for the night. So the next morning, Jim is one of the first people to step through the door. As he's unlocking the front door and opens it up, steps down. What does he step in but a bunch of water? So what had happened in the middle of the night is a water pipe burst in the basement, filled up the basement, and then leaked onto the first floor. So you think, when you hear a dream talking about floods, you're thinking it's like Noah's Ark type flood. But no, it wasn't. It was just a pipe burst. Timing, very strange, whether you consider it a coincidence or not, but he did receive that warning. He did mention the flood before the pipe had burst, so you take it as you would. So that's believed to be the Dark Lady because they moved her mantle. She loved that mantle. She saying her ghost appeared in the mirror part of it on many occasions. Now, for me personally, I had an interesting experience. Now, I don't know if I can attribute this to the Dark Lady, but it was a woman's voice. So this was before one of the tours. Now, back in the day, I'd show up for the tour to set up, and there was a couple times that they had forgotten we were coming. The previous administration has nothing to do with the wonderful folks that are in there today. But I'd have to go get the employee, bring him back. He'd open the door. We'd get going with the tour. Happened only a couple times. And on the third time, I was walking up to the building, and I started knocking, and nobody answered. So I thought, I had twice bitten, third time shy. I was listening to see if there was anybody inside, and I could actually hear voices. I heard, it sounded like two women talking to each other. It could have just been one woman talking, but it was in the distance. It was muffled. I couldn't really make out the voices. And then my first thought and if you've had a ghostly experience, I'm sure you've felt this, is your mind will kind of go through that rational side of things, and you'll think all the rational stuff. My first thought was, okay, the employees know from previous experience that they didn't show up. We had some issues that they're probably just playing a practical joke. And, I'm good. I love these. I can take a joke. But I knew people were coming. It was going to be a busy night. So I was a little bit tense. So I start banging on the door and I'm like, come on, guys, this isn't funny. Let us in. And as I'm doing this, I can see out of the corner of my eye, somebody walks around the corner and is walking towards the building. And I look over and it was the employee. And he's looking at me like I'm a psychopath. And he walks up and unlocks the door, goes inside, and turns off the alarm system, which, by the way, includes motion sensors. So if there were anybody in the building, they would have set off the alarms. So that's the first thing that hits me. Second thing that hits me is like, okay, I need to figure this out, and hopefully it's something true. Something ghostly, and that I can't find any reason for its cause. So I looked around for everything. I looked for there's a TV in there. Could have been playing something. No, the TV was off and unplugged. There was like radios and stuff. I looked for anything that would cause the sound of the woman or women talking, and there was nothing. So in my mind, it was an experience. The fact that it was a woman's voice tells me that it could have something to do with the Dark Lady, if not her herself. I thought it was two women talking. Could have been something else. I don't know. After these experiences, you never know. Now, how many of you remember a show called Creepy Canada? I know a lot of you are jumping up and down right now. I love that show too. Back in the day, before the amazing special effects that you see in the shows today, it was great at telling stories. I'll say that. I might go into detail in a future episode about my experience with Creepy Canada, which wasn't all good, but mostly good. I got my real 15 minutes of fame back then. My episode, I appeared on the Hermitage Ruins episode telling my experience with the shadows. So they filmed that, so I got my fame out of that. But the Creepy Canada episode, they actually focused in on the custom house. And I was there for that one. I wasn't there for a lot of them because I was working full-time at the time, and I couldn't stay up as late as they wanted doing the investigations because I had work the next morning. But for this one, I wasn't going to miss it because I'm personally a huge fan of the custom house. So one of our psychics, Kate Kingston, she was up in the attic. Sorry, Scratch Kingston, that has since changed. So Kate was up in the attic, and she was doing a pendulum session for the cameras. So let me set the scene. Mantelpiece, dark attic. In front is a pendulum board, which just has like a yes and no on it, and a pendulum, which, if you don't know, is a gemstone hanging on a chain so that it can rock back and forth to give you yes and no answers. So up in the attic, and then there's a couple of cameraman, the producer, Bill, and some of the team members, including myself. So Kate was in front of the mantelpiece, had some candles out to make it look cool, and you can see her and the pendulum board reflected in the mirror. So her goal was to contact the Dark Lady, and you can understand. I mean, there's a lot of pressure in these situations with these TV shows, and this is why I'm not a huge believer in things happening for the camera. So there's a lot of pressure when the cameras are on that to make stuff happen, because the producers aren't investigators in most cases. They're just trying to figure out what people are going to watch so the show doesn't get canceled. So Kate's trying to do the session and nothing's happening. It's very boring. So finally she's like, okay, let's take a break. And they shut the cameras off. And this is where she did something. Now, this is kind of like the nuclear option when it comes to ghost investigation. I mean, if you want to make stuff happen, it's a good, effective method, but I wouldn't recommend it if you want to keep things controlled, especially in a truly haunted place like the custom house. So she did something known as goading the spirit. And that's where you disrespect the spirit in so many words. You're trying to disrespect the spirit so that it does something to prove its existence. So what did Kate do? She takes out I believe it was a $20 bill from her pocket, and she throws it on the ground and says, "Dark lady, if you're real, take the money." So it's not the hugest disrespect in the world, but it is, not a nice thing to do. So she did it, but she had a reason for doing it, and I completely understood. So the cameras come back on, and Kate's continuing with the session. It's like, Dark lady, if you're here, let us know through the pendulum. And the pendulum still doesn't move, but what else has happening? We have no idea, but at the top of the mantle, right above Kate's head, is what's known as a sconce. Now, the sconce is a beautiful carved wooden piece that is sitting in a 1-inch peg so that it doesn't come out or fall. But we didn't realize this, but it was slowly moving off the peg by itself. And how do we know this? Is because it fell. So we're all looking at Kate like this is interesting. We're looking down at the pendulum because that's the focal point, and then Kate yelps as this sconce, this heavy wooden sconce, hit the back of her head. It was just amazing. I'm sorry, Kate, but it was amazing because the thing hit the back of her head. I looked up to see if the peg had come loose or broke or something. No, it was sitting right there. This 1-inch peg was still intact. So the only thing is if something had lifted it off and dropped the thing directly on Kate's head. So the Dark Lady had given her answer. So you mix the fact that the goading the spirit was focused in on the Dark Lady, and that the response was quite aggressive, then you could say that was one of those experiences. So again, we have Jim the Painter having a dream about a woman with dark hair, me hearing the voice or voices from the other side, but it was a female voice. And then, of course, at the end, Kate goading the spirit, she focused that energy on the Dark Lady, and the Dark Lady responds. So in the end, I have to say personally that I am a huge believer in this, and that I think whether the Dark Lady existed from the 1800s or not, that she does exist now. And my hope is that one day we can redo those tours. Maybe not the hunts ever again. I can understand that. But at least do the tours in there so that we can get back in the building and experience more with that. I wonder if the ghosts do miss us. I definitely miss that. But with saying that, let's take another quick break, and then I'll come back with strange news. Anything? Anybody get hit by a sconce? Probably not. Okay, this week's strange news, I am going to just bringing it up here. I am focusing on the Queen Mary ship. And I have an article here. Again, I don't reread these articles. I don't reread them in advance, so I'm really not sure where they're going to go. I like to be surprised with everybody else. That's the whole point of strange news. Be strange for me too. But it is from Forbes website. The year is 2018, April 14th. And the writer is Jim Dobson. He focuses on the travel section. The headline is, "The Queen Mary opens up its haunted hotel suite for an overnight ghostly experience." Already got me hooked. Now, from what I know right now, this is Daniel talking. I know of the Queen Mary. I know it's docked in California. It says here Long Beach, so that's a spoiler. And that it is an old cruise liner, and that it has a interesting history. I could probably be proven wrong in this article, but I know it has an interesting history, and that it is a lot of energy in it. So that because it's an older ship and that they've preserved it, it has a feel to it, and it's haunted. So let's get into the article. So again, this is Jim Dobson from Forbes.com. The Queen Mary, once labeled as one of the top 10 most haunted places on Earth by Time magazine, has launched its famously haunted stateroom B340 for overnight guests starting this month. So it's one specific room by the looks of it. The first time I visited, this is Jim talking, I personally felt this ghostly vibe and was eager to explore areas previously not made available to visitors. The infamous stateroom has a large number of recorded paranormal activity, with numerous stories of haunted encounters recorded in the ship's logs. Its dramatic history proves many lives were lost aboard the ship, added to the mystery of it. When World War II began in 1939, the Queen Mary was converted into a transport ship for Allied troops and was nicknamed the Grey Ghost. Okay, so that's interesting. So it was a liner for people to stay in, with staterooms, but that it was transported into something that could be used during the war. So it was also technically a war vessel. So nicknamed the Grey Ghost. Throughout the war, she transported 800,000 troops to Europe, and in 1942, while carrying 10,000 troops, she collided with her escort, the HMS Curacoa? It's spelled Curacoa. I'm not even going to try it. The HMS, slicing it in half. Because of the threat of the enemy nearby, the Queen Mary was forced to leave the 239 crew and ship to perish beneath the sea. That's dark. The Queen Mary was retired in 1967 after failing to attract popularity due to advancements in air travel. So times have changed. Okay, so it looks like it slammed into a warship and sliced it in half, and because of that, 239 crew members from that ship during World War II died at sea, and they blamed the Queen Mary for it. Continuing right along. Currently one of the most popular tourist attractions in America, she has become a hotel and a museum permanently docked in Long Beach, California. Throughout the years, however, the staff and visitors began to report unusual happenings with ghosts and alarming sounds appearing throughout the ship. Screams and violent noises were reported in the boiler room, where an 18-year-old sailor was severed in half by a heavy door where he was trapped. Oh man, why do all these stories have to be so dark? Anyway, a young girl also haunts the ship as she plays a nightly game of hide and seek with the guests in the empty swimming pool. The ship's Queen's Salon also contains many reports of paranormal activity, with a woman in white. All right, this brings the whole podcast to a close, right? Woman in black, now we got a woman in white. Reported to be a first-class passenger. So residing there as she slides across the floor in a long gown, dancing to a silent orchestra. Oh, that is a creepy image. I like that. It is believed that many spirits attach themselves to antique furniture or personal items remaining on the ship. I can believe that. The infamous B deck once contained the third-class cabins and is now used for guests of the Queen Mary Hotel. Long hallways of shiny wood paneling and burgundy carpets eerily add to the paranormal feeling throughout the deck, with 314 staterooms and 13 suites. The most famous of them all is B340, which used to be three third-class staterooms and were converted into one large suite. There's a picture here. As hotel rooms go, this is Daniel speaking. As hotel rooms go, I'd say it's not the nicest looking thing. And I've been on a cruise before, on like a modern cruise ship, and I'll tell you, those rooms are actually quite nice. We had a balcony room, which was very cool. Oh man, I missed that. Anyway, it's not the nicest looking thing. I can see why they decommissioned the ship, if this is their luxury suite now. But yeah, look up the picture. You can just look up B340 or the Forbes article here. Continuing. Not luxurious by any means, that's what I just said. This suite offers basic furniture, simple design, and has 2 small portholes. The lower level passengers did not experience the luxury of the other well-heeled guests. The Queen Mary stopped accepting guests to this suite due to so many complaints that it was haunted. Footsteps, faucets turning on and off, and toilets flushing on their own were all common complaints. But after numerous companies tried to rescue the failing enterprise, including Disney, oh my god, Disney tried to take over the ship, wanting to convert it into a luxury hotel, it never worked out. Now the new operators of the ship are capitalizing on the haunted luxury line to drive new interest in the infamous ship. I just say as a side note, I am a huge fan of saving historic ships and buildings with ghost angles. A huge fan of that. Those old insane asylums, Mansfield Reformatory, etc., etc. And I don't know why it hasn't caught on more in Canada, because there is an interest for that. I am personally a fan of that. If anybody out there is looking into it, let me know. I'd be involved. Anyway, I digress. A beautiful picture of the hallway too. It's quite creepy looking and awesome. Due to increased popular demand with guests wanting to experience an overnight in B340, they decided to open it up for reservations at $499 per night. It's like looking at the room. Okay, we'll call it a ghost tax. I stayed at Myrtle's Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana once, and I know the feeling of being overcharged for a room. So I understand that it's an experience, and I've gotten a lot of good stories out of that since. So technically, it worked out for the best. So I can understand why there's a lot of demand. Just that one room, it looks like you can stay in other rooms for cheaper. So $500 a night to stay in that room. Guests who stay in the room will be offered a ghostly package, including a chest with a Ouija board for private seances, tarot cards, a crystal ball, and ghost hunting equipment. Why a crystal ball? I just picture like old timey psychics, like look at, I see your future. If I ever do this in the future, I'm doing that with a crystal ball. I will record it and post it for everyone to see. I might even wear one of those like head scarves with the jewels hanging down. I'm gonna look so pretty. Yeah, so anyway, they give you for $500 a night. You also get a Ouija board, tarot cards, a crystal ball, and some ghost hunting equipment, which I assume is like an EMF detector. But the future may look a lot brighter for the struggling Great Dane, as developers plan on eventually converting the ship into a major entertainment complex and retail district, incorporating the surrounding city-owned land. They're doing something similar in Hamilton here too with the harbor front. I think it's wonderful. I think it really does, like usually downtown core or areas that are touristy have that lure, but being by the water and having this ship here, we have the Haida battleship in Hamilton is very good. So I think that will be successful. Yeah, really nothing else to say about it. It's a pretty straightforward article. Although it made me realize how much I want to look into a crystal ball now. So stay tuned for that, everyone. So yeah, definitely check it out. Forbes.com, as the headline is, The Queen Mary opens up its haunted hotel suite for an overnight ghostly experience by Jim Dobson. You can see some of the pictures here. They're a little bit small. You can probably zoom in on them a bit. It's a great picture of the room, great picture of the hallway. But that's it. I got nothing else to say to that. Just looking forward to my crystal ball. Okay, a couple of quick notes before I end the podcast. First off, the Ghost Walks website is coming along very well. I am very proud of what's happening. It's not going to be too much different design-wise than the original, because I like the original. It's going to be updated. It's going to be more compressed so that it will run faster. And as well, I'm adding the blog section. So this is the huge part of it, which I was unable to update my current site effectively to do this, is to have this blog section that will be a home for the podcast here and will be a home for the articles. So there'll be articles, there will be media as well. I like to add more of a social aspect to it, as I'm not very happy with all the I'm sorry, there's no other word, but it's just say crap. All the crap that has come from some of these social sites recently. It's just ridiculous, and it's so hard to communicate. Like I want to write these posts. I'm in charge of the social media for the Ghost Walks, and I write these posts, and to get them out, and then you post it, and like, okay, this is a really good post. And even if it goes viral, and I'm doing air quotes in a sense, it doesn't really get out. And I know it's being blocked, and partly being blocked because they want you to boost it. And for those who don't know, basically boosting is throwing money at it. So I'm not going to throw money at every single post that I put up just to get it out to my fans. Like these people that I actively went out and got to like my page. These people who enjoy that, in most parts don't see, I'm lucky to get 1/10 out, and that's even with the viral ones, the ones that get shared around, and they get shared around to people who aren't even fans of mine. I don't understand their algorithm, and I know they want that advertising money, but I don't know. I'm ranting here, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm just not happy with it. So I'm going to try and bring some of that aspect over to the Ghost Walk site, where I know, that's where people will see it. So I'm going to create a hub. I'm going to call it a ghost hub. And to do that, I needed to redesign the site. So I'm going to take a deep breath here. And, that site should hopefully be up within the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'm very excited about it. I'll try and get some initial content on there. And then as I move forward, articles that from the past article site will be brought back over. And as well, social posts. And you'll be able to comment. You'll be able to interact. It should be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. As for the ghost walks themselves, we are currently sitting in the second wave of the pandemic, third, fourth, I don't know. So the 2021 dates are being delayed. Normally I would have something up by now, but I can't. I don't know what's going to happen moving forward. I would like to continue with the outdoor tours like I've been doing last year with lots of staunch COVID policies in place, which were very safe. That's the next stage, is to bring back Niagara on the Lake in downtown Hamilton. So look out for that. I don't know when. Let's just say when the lockdown is done, I'll have some dates ready to go, and we can get back to telling ghost stories again. That's it. That's all I have. If you guys want to message me again, Ghost Guy Daniel on Facebook, or email me, ggdaniel@ghostwalks.com. Thank you for listening, everyone. All the best, and have a wonderful week.